Hi guys, it's Oli from Rad Season. I'm excited to be joined today by professional wakeboarder and co-founder of AdventureIO, Jeff McKee. Jeff, thanks for coming on the show, dude.
What's up, man? Yeah, thanks for having me, Ollie. I'm stoked to be here.
Good stuff. Whereabouts are you at the moment, man?
I am in Charleston, South Carolina, in my office, which sort of feels like a jail cell 5 months into this whole COVID situation. But I'm here every day and just hustling, man, trying to get out on the boat when I can and enjoy the weather, but pretty much permanently docked here until further notice.
And what's the situation been like? Have you kind of been, can you leave the state, or like how's it going?
I mean, it's America, man. Nobody can take our freedom away, right? So it's you can go anywhere you want, and there's no shortage of people out there just, all over the place, which is probably somewhat of the reason right now that we're having trouble getting this thing under control. But there's not any, there's like kind of capacity restrictions for restaurants and stuff like that. And then now actually, I've actually moved out from the news in the past couple of days, but we're looking at some states shutting back down. The only thing I've really noticed, we're lucky enough where I am to be kind of out in the country, and I've got a boat on the water, and we've got enough space out here to kind of stay sane with my twins here at home that are 7 years old, my wife. But as far as, I've only done like one trip really since this whole COVID thing. I went down to Florida to do a quick photo shoot with Nautique boats. And the only thing different I really noticed, apart from everybody, masking up and all that, which is good, obviously, is they in Florida, actually, they had a checkpoint when driving south where you had to go in, it was like an hour delay driving down, and I'm like, what's going to happen here? And they just asked what state you're coming from. I said South Carolina, which at the time was one of the worst states. And they're like, come on in. So it was one of those things you're like, well, what state are they not letting in? Is it the states that don't have a problem? They're like, hey, just to warn you, it's really bad down here. So I don't know, but that's kind of that's the current state of it, with really no end in sight, it seems, right now.
Right. And didn't you grow up in Florida? Was that?
I did. Yeah. So I was born and raised there, and then lived there all the way up until 32 years old, or 30, I don't know, early 30s. I'm 35 now. So spent a couple years here in Charleston. But yeah, Florida boy at heart.
And was that that would be like where you got into wakeboarding, and when did that all begin?
Yeah, I've got an older brother. He was 2 years older than me, and we grew up in Central Florida. So we were on a lake right in the backyard. It's like one of the coolest things about Florida. There's lakes literally everywhere. When you fly over Orlando, all you see is the sun reflecting off the water. Like, there's just little bits of land in between all this water. So there's tons of waterfront, lakefront homes with docks on the water. And we were lucky enough to grow up on a lake. And probably about like 10 years old, we kind of realized we were tired of sitting on the baseball field and just getting beat up by the sun at practice and stuff. And some neighbors had a wakeboard. And so we kind of, or it was a scurfer back then. So it was it looked like a surfboard with little bungee straps on it. And they were doing it, and we couldn't resist trying. And once we did, it was just like, oh man, like this is way more fun. We can be in the water and kind of do it on our own terms. So I'd say I started about 10 years old, and that's literally full focus for my brother and I. Would come home from school every day and get in our little aluminum, it's probably like a 12-foot little aluminum fishing boat with an outboard motor on it. And we just take turns towing each other around the lake, and that was it.
That's cool, man. And then when were you like looking for sponsorship around then? And when did you think, okay, I could probably take this a little bit more seriously now? And was that sort of around teenage years, or? Yeah,
so probably, I think I was actually 13 years old when I kind of got the first sponsorship deal. And wakeboarding back then was like, that was like what, 19 96 or 98 or something. Late 90s, like wakeboarding had only started in the mid 80s. So it was still young, and we were really kind of one of the first generations of younger wakeboarders. Mm-hmm. And our Groms at the time, and it was super easy to get sponsored. I literally had my dad had a over-the-shoulder camcorder that shot to VHS tape, and like we go out and shoot a couple. You know, I could do a tantrum, which was a backflip, was kind of my first invert. And once you get one invert, they all start coming pretty quick. And yeah, you would mail a VHS tape off to a brand, and that's kind of how you got your gig. You're like, oh, this kid's 13 and he can flip, we'll take him. So that was kind of how it started. But we also did, you know, in Orlando, it was kind of the birthplace of, not the birthplace of wakeboarding, but the mecca of wakeboarding at that time. So if you were a pro wakeboarder, you were trying to become one, and it's still kind of the same case today, you would go to Florida because you can do it all year round. I mean, my favorite time in Florida is like September to April. You know, the winter down there is the best time. The summer, you're kind of like walking around asking yourself what the hell you're doing there. You know, you'd be sweating, taking the garbage out at midnight, and but the winter months are incredible. So that's why so many people end up there. And so we did have some connection to a couple of you know, pro wakeboarders at the time that were on neighboring lakes, et cetera. And they kind of mentored us and mm-hmm. you know, took us out and taught us what they knew. And so it was cool. We were, you know, kind of under the wing of a couple of the right people as well.
Awesome. And was most of the time there just like hanging around the lakes? Because I remember, I think it was when we spoke a while back, and you were sort of saying, you know, like when people think of Florida, they just think of Disney, and they think of, you know, all the amusement parks, and there's so much more that you can do there, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, we honestly, people would always ask us, oh, you live in Orlando, you must go to Disney all the time. It's like, yeah, I've been like twice, you know? Like you've probably been more than me traveling from other countries, you know, or whatever. But I mean, there's amazing stuff there. There's the chain of lakes in Windermere. I mean, there's a lot of different chain of lakes. That Windermere is the area where I grew up, and there's 13 lakes that are all connected together, all freshwater, spring-fed lakes. And so there's tons of water-based activities, you know. But you know, in addition to that, and when I got older, I moved over to the other side of town to another chain of lakes, and it's just a great way to spend, you know, either whether you're wakeboarding seriously or you're just out on the weekend with friends and, you know, want to pull up to a sandbar or something like that and kind of relax. Like there's a lot of cool things to see. And I mean, some of the canals and through connecting all these different waterways, I mean, it feels like a kind of natural amusement park in a way. Yeah. So yeah, and then even beyond that, there's cool things like, you know, freshwater springs, like where it's crystal clear water and all that. So yeah, we always did our best to stay away from Disney, but it was either you go on the boat and get in the water, or you go to the beach, which was only, you know, New Smyrna Beach was an hour drive from Orlando where we lived. So if there's good waves, you'd be over there, and I don't really, you know, basically everything was in the water though.
Yeah, that's cool. And then, what did you decide to move? What was the reason?
Family, mostly. So I got married, met my wife down in Florida. And she was raised here in Charleston, South Carolina, and her family lives here today. And as we had our twin children, who we had a boy and a girl, and they're now 7, which I can't believe. We quickly, like, we're just, holy cow, we need as much help as we can, and you know, kind of realized that just, you know, grandparents want to see their grandbabies, and my wife rides horses actually, and that's another reason too. Like we had access to come up here to be close to a farm where we can, you know, she can get on horses and do all that. And so I sort of just lost the battle, honestly. But I was ready for a change. And if you're in Florida and you're not in the water, it's pretty miserable. And that was kind of her case. She was in Florida and wanted to ride horses, and she's just like, my God, it's hot down here. So yeah, I kind of sacrificed a bit to come up here, you know, not having access to like freshwater is a little bit more challenging, but also really fun. Like the boating up here is really different, man. Like we can take, it's like a different adventure every time. It's like, oh, we can go to this beach, on this island to the south of us, and you can, the kids can hunt for shark's teeth. And if there's a little bit of wave, like they can surf. I mean, there's not great swell here, but, it's still a beach. And so the majority of my surfing I still do behind the boat, even though I'm up here on the coast. But there's, downtown, which is kind of a cool old historic European feel, and you can be down there with big container ships, like, passing by. And yeah, just a different type of boating. We're definitely a smaller fish in the pond up here. But it's fun to, you spend the day, in Florida, when you go boating, you go out for like 1 hour and you practice your tricks. And when you go boating in South Carolina, where I am, you load up the cooler and you invite all your friends, and it's kind of an all-day affair, which is fun. And it's more inclusive for the family and more exciting for everybody, I think.
That's cool. And did you get the twins involved as well? Like are they into it?
Yeah, they love going on the boat. Actually, just this past weekend, I got my son. My son's been dabbling a bit more than my daughter. She's still. It's funny. She's really brave on land, and then as soon as we get on the water, she gets kind of like locked up. But she'll surf with me. So, both of them all day long, they'll be like, "Dad, let's surf," and they want me to hold them, or they want to hang on my back or sit on my shoulders while we're trying to surf the wave. And that was fine up until like 6 years old. And like literally over the weekend, I was holding my daughter. I was like, I can't do this. So you're like, you're like 55 pounds now hanging on my neck while I'm trying to keep rolling here. But my son's getting a bit more brave and adventurous and getting on the board himself. He's mostly kind of like, laying on his stomach or going to his knees, and he'll stand up every now and then, but I'm just trying to keep it fun, and I'm not going to pressure him. I didn't even start till I was 10. So they've already got a head start over where I was at. And, if they get into it and most important for me is just that they have fun out there and they're not getting mad at me for trying to, force them to do something. So
yeah.
The less I push, the more they seem to enjoy it. So trying to roll that route and see how it develops.
Cool. And I'd love to talk about, I guess, where the idea and the inspiration for AdventureIO came about, and where did that all begin?
So basically we've been lucky, like in wakeboarding, even though it's kind of the small, I'd say it's the smallest of the action sports, right? But you still have some amazing opportunities. And it is growing pretty big with things like wake surfing and the hydrofoil and all that coming into play now. But we got to travel and still do get to go everywhere and meet awesome people that are excited to have you, right? So like when Australia, for example, is probably my favorite trip. I don't know when it'll happen again in the current state. But I used to go every year on my birthday, and working with Slingshot, the wakeboard brand that I've been team managing and now brand managing for. And you'd land and people would be excited to pick you up. They're like, oh, Jeff's coming. He's a pro wakeboarder. We're going to take him out and show him the best spot to go wakeboarding. And like, if he likes, he likes to surf, we'll take him, wherever's the best point or whatever that we can surf. And you just always felt kind of VIP and had somebody chauffeuring you around. And that's a really cool feeling, especially when you're somewhere like halfway across the world, right? To land and be like welcomed and have friends there. And so many people don't have that connection, and so that was kind of, I guess, the start of it. And really, we started the app. I started it in partnership. Co-founder is my brother, who's a bit older, and he was also a pro wakeboarder, but he got out and kind of into the real world in his, I'd say, early 20s. So he's like sort of over the years started to lose all those connections of people that were like, oh, here comes Billy, the pro wakeboarder, right? It kind of turned into like he's a bit, just a little bit more of an average guy, right? So he'd get off the plane and he's like, shit, nobody's here to pick me up. Like nobody's here to show me around, right? So he'd call me all the time, be like, hey, I'm going here. Do you know anybody? You know, because he wanted that same VIP kind of experience. And he ended up doing really well in kind of his previous businesses, and some of them had to do with kind of apps and technology platforms. And so basically we were on a family trip. We went to Montana and we knew nobody. So we were stuck. We were like, man, we're the tourist people trapped here. Like we're literally like, if they had a trifold pamphlet at the airport, we would grab it and be like, oh, what can we do here? And so that's kind of where it came up. It was like, man, I know there's people in this town that are just like us, and probably have amazing equipment, access, knowledge, and we just don't know how to find them, And so it was like, there's got to be an easier way to connect all the kind of, these cool action sports, like opportunities and experiences and people in one platform, And so that's kind of where we're just sitting around, like having beers at the end of one day on that trip, and like, let's do it. Which was like a crazy, it's like, oh my God, we're going to do it. Like we're going to start this. And that was a couple of years ago. And then, yeah, I mean, here we are. We went live in the App Store in April of 2019. So we're just a little over a year of technically being live. And it's been really cool so far. Like we've met so many awesome people. Like our connections of like-minded people around the globe has like increased tenfold in the last year of just, recruiting and connecting with people. And it's working. It's awesome. Like to put somebody out with a world champion wakeboarder and have them like write you a note and say, this was the best day our family's ever had. Like, thank you for setting this up. It's a really cool feeling to like kind of pair people with these elevated experiences and people who they might be a fan of or whatever the case is, and just send them out there and have something that's, that's next level.
Cool. And did it start off, were you like primarily looking at action sports activities and like outdoor adventures? Like, was there kind of like, coming from a wakeboarding background, were you like, okay, right, if we start this off with wakeboarding and then it just sort of expanded from there, or like, how did it go?
Yeah, we kind of pretty, to be completely honest, as I get older and wakeboarding is awesome, but I think if I could do it all over again, like surfing's even better to me. I love to go surf. It's just such a fun, cool experience and something you can do till you're much older, right? So we started based like with water sports, it's like, okay, wakeboarding's easy because we know everybody, so that's obviously like we'll get that rolling, but like we've made our focus from the start, like we need to branch out quickly into other sports, you know what I mean, so that we don't get kind of labeled as just like this wakeboarding app, right? Because we do love to wakeboard, but we love to do anything that's outside. So kind of the number one rule was like, hey, anything under the sun that gets your blood flowing and kind of gets the adrenaline flowing is the key. And we don't want to put people out, and there's those kind of there's stuff out there, right? Like say like a kayak tour or something like that you kind of don't want to be caught doing. It's like, oh yeah, we'll go do it, but here I am in the kooky helmet and the goofy life jacket, and I'm getting like I'm with the crowd of like 20 other tourists, and like 5 of them are not going to be able to stand on or not even going to be able to get in the kayak without falling or whatever. And it's like, there's better options and experiences than that. And so that's kind of was the key. Like, let's pull you out of the herd of just being treated as a typical tourist and give you something that feels more exclusive, especially now, like more private or fully private, right? Like maybe it's just your family and one guide, right? And that guide's more of a local and for example, like I'm taking people out this week to go learn to hydrofoil, taking people out to paddleboard on the creek here, which, is a little bit softer, more mellow of an experience, right? But they're going out with, a brand rep, which is me, as opposed to just some guy running standard paddleboard tours who doesn't care and only wants to do is get back to the dock at 5 o'clock and get rid of these people, you know? So it's more of it's a fun experience, not only for the guest, but for the guide as well, right? To be like, I'm sharing one of my favorite things to do with my family with somebody else who's come into town and you know, wants to kind of get the inside look at what the area has to offer.
Cool. And you can kind of, you've been testing a few of these experiences out as well, I've heard. Like, didn't you go on a surf trip? You went to Costa Rica?
Yeah. Before, in the end of 2019 was great. Before we got locked in, it was, we went from Costa Rica, came home for a couple of days, and then straight off to Maui. And yeah, so there's a lot of fun work trips coming our way whenever we can travel a little bit more freely here. But that's kind of the key. Like, you know, Costa Rica, for example, we went down to Guanacaste area, which is right near Tamarindo, and spent a week with our buddy Clay McCutcheon, who's a guide on the app now. His company's called Walk on Water Adventures, and you know, he's kind of just a specialist in that area. And so we booked him, and we're just like, hey, we're coming down. We want to know everything about this experience. We had Sam August join us, the son of Robert August, from the Endless Summer. So that was really cool, you know, to kind of be able to surf with him and hear his story. And, you know, you basically cut out all the BS that you don't want to deal with on a trip like that, where it's like, okay, you know, even down to as fun as it is, like to go drive, like in Costa Rica, right? Like every trip to a beach that we took, you know, was probably half the time with those guys in charge as it would have been if we went down there cold and we're just like, all right, we're going and we're going to figure it out. You know, we'd probably have the vehicle stuck in a river and have half the day gone and miss the surf session, right? Whereas you're with them and they're like, they know all the shortcuts, they know this and that. It's just, you know, they're zooming around and boom, here we go. The tide's right, the wind's right. This is your spot for the day. And it was rad. I mean, I've surfed more than I've ever surfed on any surf trip in that week down there, and got to go out to Witch's Rock and, you know, experience that firsthand, which is one of the famous kind of scenes from the Endless Summer movie. So It was rad, man, to be like, hey, we're here kind of living it, and we're with a guy whose last name is August, you know, and like, we're like, this is a real deal, you know? So.
And then were there any other trips, obviously, like, there must have been quite a few that you guys had planned before this all happened?
Well, you know, honestly, we were kind of like in the event mode, I guess, coming into spring, but a lot of things, you know, changed and canceled, et cetera. And even some of our guides, you know, like down in like Costa Rica, for example, Clay came out of there for a bit because it was just kind of locked down, right? So we're focusing now quite a bit more on just local opportunities and experiences, right? Like, so like I say our hot spots for activity are definitely Florida, California, you know, here in South Carolina where I'm at is a great one, and Hawaii as well. You know, we've got them pretty well loaded out with guides and opportunities. Sorry about all these texts I'm getting coming through. Yeah, so right now we're just putting together all sorts of stuff where it's like, hey, you know, you might live in Southern California, but you've never been to Catalina Island, you know, like that's the trip you have to take, and you can do it without getting on a plane. Yeah. Or, you know, in Florida, it's like, hey, like you can go paddleboard or go dive in the springs with a PADI certified freedive guide, and do things that are nearby that you would have never done before, right? So it's been really interesting, and especially in this last month or two, to see people, you know, you can tell everybody's going stir crazy, and they have got to get out and do something to change up the kind of, you know, the routine that we're all stuck in right now. Everybody's home every weekend, which is, for me, is great. I've never been home this much and explored around Charleston this much. But, you know, to avoid blending every day together, it's like, all right, this weekend we're going to go surf with somebody special, or we're going to go dive or go mountain biking, do something different to mix it up. And, you know, we'll wear a mask, we'll you know, stay 6 feet apart or whatever it is like that we have to do, but like we got to get out there.
Yeah. And I guess the good thing with all this is you can, you know, it's not like being inside, being all together. Like if you're going to go mountain biking with someone, you know, you can keep your distance and you're out in nature anyway, right?
Yeah, and that's kind of the biggest thing is like, you know, we've been super lucky in all this that, and you know, I mean, it definitely went quiet for a while. Like it was at the start of this whole thing, it was, you know, crickets basically, right? As I think everybody was, it's just everybody was scared and locked in. And now it's like, okay, life is going to go on. Like we are stuck in this and we definitely have to stop this somehow. And so, you know, that luckily people are wearing masks way more and doing all that type of, you know, all those precautions and taking the, you know, small groups thing way more seriously. And yeah, I mean, you can limit your exposure pretty easily, you know, down to just, you know, say it's just your family plus one guide, right? And, you know, you mask up and keep your distance. You know, go for a shaka instead of a high five, and you know, and then you can still get something done that's fun and kind of, you know, enjoy life, right? I mean, we have to do that through all this, but
are there any experiences that you've kind of got on your bucket list that you want to do? Like if it's either anything locally or just around the States?
Let's see. I'm fascinated by the free dive stuff. Honestly, we did before we went to Maui before the shutdown. We went out with one of our guides down there at Free Dive Hawaii. Ben Zions is his name, and we went and we were just off the coast of Lahaina, and it was awesome, man. Being with people who are good at diving and comfortable and like and they know how to sense when something's wrong, right? Yeah. It makes you feel way more confident. It's like, okay, I can go down there and I can sit and hang out and they've all got their eyes on me. And like, you know, just honestly being around their professionalism and their expertise just makes you step up immediately. You know, it's like, okay, cool. This guy just dove to the ocean floor at 100 feet down and he was there and he didn't come back for like 3 minutes. You know,
it's just gnarly,
like, hey, Ben, I'm not going that far, but I'd like to, you know, it's like, I'd like to maybe get a minute, you know? And that was really cool. So I love the free dive stuff is really cool and really interesting to me, especially as, you know, kind of helps relate to surfing, for example, right? Like getting tossed around and a wipeout or whatever and being held down, like being able to be comfortable there. That's really cool. Shark dive would be awesome. Little bits, you know, I guess I'd kind of go back and forth on that one, but just seems like something that would really get the blood flowing as far as being fun and something that would be cool on the bucket list to say you've done. So, but honestly, my favorite thing to do right now is to go tow and foil, like anywhere there's a swell, as long as it's not breaking on the foil. I mean, it's like snowboarding down a mountain, and that's like,
yeah, I've never tried it. I've always wanted to give it a crack. It's kind of,
yeah, man, it's, and actually you're typically in Portugal, right? That's kind of home base for you.
Yeah. So we're based in Lisbon.
Yeah. So. Man, there's a lot of guys even out at like Nazaré and stuff that are starting, and I know, like, you know, it's insane there. But there's people foiling all over the place out there lately, it seems like, trying to figure out how to ride those waves farther out or whatever. And but it's fun. It's literally, it feels like snowboarding in powder on this, and you know, on the ocean swell, you're kind of on this endless mountain. It's just moving, you're moving along with it, you know? To me, it's the coolest feeling. I'm super jealous of, I mean, there's been some of my friends that have been locked down in Hawaii, you know, like, oh, I'm trapped here another couple months with the virus, so I'll just be foiling every day, you know? So, but yeah, man, that's, to me, that's the top dog right now. If I go anywhere, do anything, it's that.
Nice. And are you doing a bit of like wake surfing as well, or because I've seen like with the boats advancing, I mean, is that getting more popular, would you say? Or
it is, yeah, absolutely. So and we used to, like, I'd say, when was it? 2014 maybe was the first year of kind of, and I might be, don't quote me on that, I could have been 13, right? But around that area, around that time, the surf system came out for the boats, which is just like a plate system that pops out on either side of the corners of the boat. Mm-hmm. And it helps make a, basically a super clean curling wave on one side of the boat. And they started out about like knee high, and so it was fun. It was easy to do, fun, but the wave was small, right? And then all of a sudden the wave was, up to your thigh. And then now it's probably waist high. Like they just keep figuring out the boats and dialing them in better and better. The boat brand that I work with and we have a partnership with AdventureIO, Nautique, is kind of been leading the charge on it all. And they have a new boat called the Paragon, which has the biggest wave I've ever surfed behind a boat. So I usually ride a little twin fin, like 4.6 surfboard, and it's enough. Like it's enough traction. I got on that Paragon boat and I was like, oh my God, I think I need a third fin. Like I'm kind of a squirrely mess here. Just because we never had that much power or kind of like yeah, I mean, it was like, it's a steep waist high, like you can pop off of it, you can go fast. Like, it was the first time I wake surfed and I was like, wow, my legs are kind of shaking. Like that was rad, like I really want to do more of that. But I need an extra fin just to help me keep my shit together, basically.
Cool, man. And what are you guys working on at the moment? Is there any kind of either new experiences or new projects coming up with AdventureIO?
Yeah, so right now we're focusing on a lot of we've got a couple new resort partnerships, which is a really cool opportunity and avenue that we've been working hard on. So one in particular that we're doing all the programming for has locations all over the U.S. and Maui, and so we're putting together some really high level kind of epic experiences or adventures for them. One of them, for example, in Maui, you can go out and you go out to the island from Maui to the island of Molokai, which is off in the distance of Maui, basically. So at this particular resort, you're looking right at Molokai, and you can basically take a helicopter over there, jump on the boat with a world champion paddleboarder, Connor Baxter, cruise around the island. The island has the tallest sea cliffs in the world, and kind of just this like super epic Hawaiian adventure, right? And you're with a world champion paddleboarder exploring the shore, snorkeling, etc. Then there's a private lunch on a with the only local chef, basically. He's the celebrity chef on the island. But private lunch with him on the west end of Molokai on this private beach. And just kind of one of those things where it's like, holy cow, everybody else sat here at the pool all day, and we went out and just like experienced like wild, rugged, Hawaii, right?
That's awesome.
So doing some cool stuff like that. I think I mentioned like some Catalina trips and things like that. So working between kind of brand partnerships, and resort partnerships to just put together some really cool, different experiences. So when you go, on your next family vacation, right, and you're sitting there thinking like, gosh, like what's happening outside of the walls of this resort? Like, we've got some epic opportunities for you to be able to go out and experience the area, right, with somebody special, and then, come back and kind of check it off the list and say we did that place right,
Yeah, sick, cool, man. And what's the best way for people to follow you and find out what's going on?
So I mean, obviously social, everything's there, kind of most up to date and current. On Instagram, myself, I'm Jeff McKee, and then obviously AdventureIO. And on the web, we've got our live web app for adventures, web.adventureapp.io. And then also just adventureapp.io for, to see what we're up to and what we're doing, and find some rad opportunities to mix it up and get out there.
Cool. Good stuff. Well, yeah, it's been awesome talking to you, Jeff, and yeah, look forward to seeing like what other experiences and what you guys have got going on.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And we look forward to doing some fun stuff together when everybody's ready to jump back on the planes and you know, mix it up a bit more. So I'm sure everybody's allowed to come to America. We're probably just not allowed to leave right now, right? I doubt anybody wants us coming their way.
I don't know. We've been I did a road trip through Europe, and it's kind of been like yeah, depending on what country you go to, it's like we drove from Portugal across to Germany. Yeah, and that was sort of, it's interesting, you know, like the different regulations and rules when you're going into Spain and then France. So yeah, we just got to see what happens.
Yeah, it does seem like they're treating it. I mean, it seems, you know, as with most things, it seems that Europe has it together, right? And then we're just the wild as usual.
I don't know. I don't know about that. It's sort of
no.
Depends where you go. But
yeah. All right. Well, we're gonna get through it. You know what? Life is gonna go on, hopefully sooner than later. But I think in the meantime, right, like we're pretty well positioned with the sports that we do and love, and you know what I mean? Like we're just gonna have to be conscious of you know, following the proper procedures, I guess.
Yeah, that's it.
So
cool, man.
Awesome.
Okay, dude. Cheers.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me.
See you soon. Bye.
Yeah, later.